All right. Welcome, everyone. We are going to get going. Welcome to our sixth installment of the Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series, where we bring together important members of our community and highlight our many strengths. Today's panel is focused on our women trailblazers. This panel makes a lot of sense to do now for so many reasons. One, yes, it is our centennial anniversary, our 100th year anniversary, which of course we have declared will go on as long as we need it to, well outside of 2020. But also this is the anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment. This is the first time in our 100-year history that 60% of our entering 1L class is women. And of course, we're in a moment where we pay tribute in so many things we do to the memory of Justice Ginsburg, which makes it an important opportunity and time for us to convene. In recognition of the important moment, I have asked my colleague, Professor Laurie Levenson, the David W. Burcham Professor of Ethical Advocacy, to serve as our moderator today. Laurie needs no introduction, but I'll introduce her anyway. Laurie's been an important member of our community for over 30 years. I wanted to acknowledge Laurie's role in building and curating our Women's Roundtable program, which many of our panelists, I know many of our guests today, participated in over the course of their careers. Most recently, Laurie has been the leader of the Loyola Project for the Innocent, which has assisted in the release of 11 clients, I believe 4 during our centennial anniversary of 2020. It's really an honor to be a part of this today and to turn the reins over to Laurie, who's someone who, in addition to all that she's done for our community, has really been a friend and mentor and somebody that's been supportive of my time at Loyola since the beginning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laurie to introduce our stellar panelists. And it's going to be a good show, folks.
It's going to be a lot of fun. As we say, last call for a good time. Thank you, Dean Waterstone. We are thrilled to be here. And you know what? I brought a date. Sandy Koufax is with us for this special moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited and so honored to be doing this program today. You may call these ladies trailblazers. I'm simply going to call them rock stars. They're my heroes. These are 3 of the most incredible women in the legal profession. They have done it all, and you'll hear about it today. Not only what they've done, but how they've done it, and how they've boldly gone where women did not go before. We also hope that'll be a lot of fun, and you'll have a chance in the last 15 minutes to ask questions, so put them right into the Q&A. I hope that next time we meet, it will be at my home. We will be enjoying ourselves and getting together to celebrate once again the wonderful place that Loyola Law School is. So let me introduce right now these amazing women. And I'm going to start with Pat Phillips, class of 67. Pat is a partner at Philip Jessner. She serves as a mediator and an arbitrator for business, employment, and family matters. She was the first woman elected president of the LA County Bar, which, by the way, is the largest voluntary bar association in the United States. She served and just finished her term as the president of the Chancery Club. And yes, the first woman to ever be the president of the Chancery Club. She's received so many awards and honors. I think the only thing she hasn't received, but I was thinking about it, naming my first child after her. She's certainly on the board of the LA board, of the Loyola Board of Directors, and she did establish the Women and the Law Scholarship at Loyola Law School in 2015. I will also add that her daughter, Sam Jessner, was just elected as the assistant presiding judge of our Superior Court. Welcome, Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you
Let
very
me
much, Laurie.
next welcome Justice Kathryn Doi Todd, class of 1970. Justice Todd was the first Asian American woman in the country to sit on the bench. She was born in the midst of the Second World War, which meant that she spent her young years in an internment camp, first in Wyoming and then in Northern California. with her family. After graduating from Loyola, she was one of only 3 Japanese American women lawyers in Los Angeles, and so she founded the Japanese American Bar Association. Jerry Brown, on his first round as the governor, appointed her to the LA Municipal Court bench in 1978, where, as a first, she became the first Asian American woman judge in the country. She then was made the presiding judge of the juvenile court, and in 2000, Justice Todd joined as an associate justice of the California Court of Appeal, Second Appellate District, Division 2. Welcome, Kathryn, Justice Todd.
Thank you.
And then we have our good friend Maria Villa, who was graduated in 1986 and is with her own law firm, Lathrop and Villa, which was co-founded in 1992. Again, another first. She is the first Hispanic attorney to be elected to the California State Bar Board of Governors, serving as both the vice president and also the treasurer. She is a founding fellow of the State Bar Foundation. She's a member of MABA, the Mexican American Bar Association of LA County, co-founder of the Latina Lawyers Bar Association, lifetime member of the Hispanic National Bar Association. And she continues to work to support Loyola. For the last 20 years, she's been putting together scholarships for Latina students. She's a founding board member of Loyola's Immigrant Justice Clinic, one of our many wonderful clinics. So, hey, folks, welcome to all of these amazing women and graduates of Loyola Law School. Ladies, we have a multi-generational audience with us today. You started out in a world that was quite different from the one we have now, where women were represented, where women are now represented, whether it be on faculty or in law firms or on the bench. Can you each give our audience an idea of the personal and social and professional challenges you faced to accomplish what you have? And I'm going to start with you, Pat.
I could write a book, as they say, and I am, as a matter of fact, but the world in 1963, when I started, was the legal world was almost bereft of women who were lawyers, at least in our legal community. There were some, and I can kind of count them on one hand. One, of course, was Shirley Huffstetler, who ultimately became my partner and was a wonderful mentor to me. But there were wonderful, wonderful women. Ruth Levine was one. I'm not sure if Ruthie was contemporaneous or a little bit after, but women came along very rapidly after that time. As an example, however, of the paucity of women I think you mentioned, Laurie, that there was 60%, or maybe Michael said, the dean said that there were 60% women now. So I'm going to hold up my graduating picture for everybody to see. And here in the front, I hope you can see the 6 or 7 women out of a class of 99. Wow. And it is quite different now. Fortunately, it is quite different now. And that's all for the betterment, not only of women, but for our folks, our country in general, because in my view, the more of the type of sensibilities that one associates with women, and hopefully it's true, the better off we're all going to be. So as far as I'm concerned, I think times have changed markedly. They have changed much, much for the better. I'm very lucky to have had the support of many, many people at the time, most of them men, of course, because that's who was there. But basically, I've been very, very lucky to have had Loyola Law School behind me.
Thank you, Pat. Kathryn, can you talk a little bit about the challenges and why you decided to go into the law and what it was like to do that when you entered Loyola Law School?
Well, when I was young, I didn't know a lawyer. I had no idea about becoming a lawyer. My first contact with any kind of law was studying in the law school when I was an undergraduate in the library. And my God, to see those rows and rows of case books, I thought, this is nothing I want to do. And it's just sort of a strange path that led me. I was not able to, I was, after college, I was going to go into the Peace Corps. I'd been accepted to the Peace Corps, but I couldn't go because of some family difficulties. My father had a stroke, so I stayed home with him. And I stayed home with him for a couple of years. Everyone else in my family was still too young to help out that way. And I got a job part-time in a one-person law firm in Little Tokyo, 3 hours a day. And that's where I was exposed to it. And the clientele was mostly, at that time, this was in the late 70s. Well, no, late 60s. There were, most of the Japanese American lawyers in town were in sole practices, and there were just a handful of them. I'm not aware of any women at that time, to tell you the truth.
Did it feel
With
lonely?
that exposure, excuse me?
Did it feel lonely, not being the only woman?
I wasn't, no, I was just working in the law firm at that time. But that was my first exposure, and it was through that and seeing what work a lawyer does that made me interested in going to law school. And that's how I ended up going to law school. But, when I started practicing, I practiced in Little Tokyo. There were just a handful of lawyers, and everyone was in basically a sole practice. And I was aware of two other women at that time, two other Japanese American women lawyers, and one was Madge Watai.
Oh, yeah. She was in my class.
Well,
Madge was in my class, right.
Madge was practicing with her husband, George, in Gardena, another sort of Japanese American community. So, and then there was a woman who had been licensed from before the war, but licensed through working for a lawyer. You know how I used to be able to do that. So there were just the three of us at that time. I don't know if I thought about being lonely, but one thing I can tell you is that everyone helped me. All the lawyers, the other Japanese American lawyers around helped me. They sent me cases. They associated me in their cases. So it was a different time, but there were lots of privileges. I didn't particularly feel lonely, but the circle that I was in the Japanese American community.
Thank you. Maria, your turn. A little bit about sort of why you decided to go to law school and the challenges you faced.
Well, I'm first generation, 4 generations on both sides of my family. First to graduate from high school, first to go to college, first to consider attending graduate school. And when my parents immigrated here, I'm the eldest of 7, but at the time there were just 2 of us. And they were entrepreneurs. They started a manufacturing business out of our garage in Redondo Beach first, and decided to open a company. And I was working in junior high school, working on my days off and vacations in the office, learning how to run an office, a small office. And I saw firsthand the challenges my parents faced, discrimination, the lack of understanding of the legal process here in the law, and what recourses they had as small business owners against clients that wouldn't pay on time and would take discounts that they weren't entitled to because of their paying late. They felt they had no recourse. And I knew that in this country we had, the small business person had recourses. So that really planted the seed to go to law school, to learn the process, to help people so they would not be taken advantage of. that's was what ultimately led me to law school, not wanting people to be taken advantage of. Secondly, when I attended in 1983, when I started law school, Sally Ride had taken her first flight in space. Who else? Margaret Thatcher had won her by a landslide, her second term as prime minister. And Senator Dale O'Connor had already been appointed to the Supreme Court. So I thought, we've arrived as women. We are all equals. So the sky's the limit for me, you know, thanks to people like here on the panel and other women, that the road's been paved. It'd be easy, but that was not to be, because the more things change, the more they stay the same, and we still have challenges as women to overcome, to be considered as equal and considered for different positions, especially leadership positions.
So we will ask about those in a minute. I will want to hear about them. I just want to ask Pat for a second. Pat, you showed us that great picture of your law school class. So what was it actually like in law school as one of those few women in the class? And when you went to law school, did you have a sense of where you wanted your career to go? Or was that sort of groundbreaking, you didn't know?
Well, the reason I went to law school is that I didn't want to be a secretary anymore. And I didn't want anybody to be my boss anymore. Now I just have 5 bosses. Those are my 5 children. It was challenging. I was one of Dean Dibble's favorite person. I don't know if any of you remember. Well, you wouldn't remember Dean Dibble, of course not.
I do. Rex Dibble. He was the
Yes, Rex Dibble. He was such a presence. You know, when I started, the law school was located over on 9th and Grand, and Dean Dibble was there every time you went into the rooms, any of the rooms. There were only 3 classrooms at that time, as I recall, and each classroom, it started out with one great big classroom, you know, and everybody went for the first one, you know, law school 101, whatever it was, or maybe still is. And then the next classroom was much smaller than that. And then finally there was the third, and for evening students, as I started out, there was the last classroom, and it was very, very small. And I wonder why. And I guess we kind of all know at this point in time, because it was a tough haul. And I know it still is a tough haul, but at that point in time, there was very few women, as I said before. And on top of that, from a personal perspective, throughout my law school career, like you, Maria, and I think Kathy, you even said that there were no lawyers in my family. I was the first person in my family to complete college. I was the first person to do any graduate work whatsoever. And so it was a kind of me out there hanging on the limb. I don't want to say all by myself, because as I said before, I had lots of support, but as time went on, and I kept getting pregnant over and over again. It's a good thing it takes 9 months, because who knows how many kids I would have. But in any event, in those early days, you know, there were no accommodations for women at the old law school, and there were hardly any when the new law school was first built. You know, they were building this beautiful library, which I think was the first building, and nobody thought to ask the women students what would be comfortable. And finally, if I recall correctly, we had a kind of a sit-in where we went somewhere in the school and protested the fact that there was no lounge for the women. And this was at the very beginning of the opening. It was hardly finished, the new law school. And finally, we got a women's lounge. in the law school. And I think that was the beginning of the great influx of wonderful women. It was great fun in those days.
Kathryn, are there any specific moments you remember from law school, either as great moments or challenging moments?
You know, I was thinking that I think we had about 10% women in our class. I'm not positive about that. Personally, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was shy. So to be called upon in class was just something that I was so afraid of. But you know what it made me do? I studied so hard. I mean, I knew every case and outlined every case. I had notes. And I absolutely loved law school. I mean, I found it so intellectually challenging. I really appreciated my professors. I mean, I loved Rex Dibble, for example, who was known, I understand that he was very politically conservative, but he never presented constitutional law in any kind of partisan way. It was wonderful.
So, and Maria,
And you know, one of the things that I wanted to mention of that 10%, a number of us became judges. I mean, Sheila Sonnenschein was in my class, Judy Bavetta at the time. And then in the class after mine, Susan Andelson. I mean, there were so many women who went into the judiciary, a large percentage considering. So I wonder if we were particularly motivated.
maybe you were tough. Maybe you were tough.
Probably tough, and we're probably motivated, you know, to do
Maria,
it.
Maria, what was the atmosphere like for you when you were in law school? And did you feel like you were treated differently because you were a woman?
Actually, not too much. We were almost 50% women at the time. I think it was 48%. Wow. Very supportive group of women, diverse. My best friend, Sandy, her parents had immigrated from China. I met her the first day and we bonded right away. We're still best friends. She now works at FEMA, so I don't see her very much. Leela Kapoor is currently the chief of staff for Mike Fuhrer, and she, we all bonded. We had a close group of friends and that supported one another through the hell of first year. No offense to the professor, but it was challenging. It was very tough for all of us. But that support system really helped us, and the La Raza student organization as well. And Leela and Sandy joined La Raza, and I met my husband, Steve Lathrop, in my first year class too. And so all of us joined La Raza and supported that organization, even though they were not Hispanic. But that was a good place to go to be inspired, to vent a little bit, and then get back out there.
Well, I think it was mentioned, and we have a question on this too. So I wanted to get the sense from this amazing panel. And we've gone from you seeing Sandra Day O'Connor being the first Supreme Court justice, but since then we've had Justice RBG, Sotomayor, Kagan, and yesterday, Justice Barrett was confirmed to the court. And I'm just wondering what your perspective on is broadly on women's accomplishment in the judicial system. And I'll actually start with Kathryn on that one.
Well, listen, we have an Asian American woman as our Chief Justice in California, and that's been for some time now, which I think is quite remarkable. You know, when we started, there were the women used to bring our children to court for one day, just I guess to show that we were women and mothers at the same time. My daughter was 3 at the time. I brought her to court with me. I was in the traffic courts building, and next door was Robert Higa, who had been appointed on the same day I was. And so I introduced my daughter to Bob Higa. And afterwards she said to me, "I didn't know men could be judges." Oh. I mean, that's so it just depends on your perspective, you know. What was the question, Laurie? How,
Oh, no, the question is just sort of your view of the, evolution of women in the profession and on the bench in particular.
well, it's made a tremendous impact on decisional law that I am convinced of, just from a female perspective, from female sensibilities, female experiences. So I think that's made a big difference.
Maria, do you have a thought on this?
I
What
do.
difference is made?
To paraphrase RBG, women belong in place where decisions are being made. It should not be that we are the exception. And I think we still are the exception, despite the, just as Doi Todd was saying. There's still that perception that, oh, we can't have too many women leaders in bar associations in a row. We can't, that was the impetus for forming Latina lawyers. The guys said, oh, there's been too many women. I think there was going to be a fourth coming, president-elect. And so they brought in all the guys who outnumbered the women in the bar association. And so that's how we got, it was a coup, I guess. And then we made the decision to form our own organization back in 1997. But I would be happy, as RBG said, when there are 9, when it's the norm for majority women to be in a position on the bench in women in a row as governor of California. Would be great to see a woman and president. So I guess I still have high expectations and aspirations for that.
So Pat, you've gone from seeing Sandra Day O'Connor get appointed to the most recent appointment. What big picture can you give us about women accomplishing positions at the highest level? And what difference does it make in your practice, in your life?
Well, it makes all the difference in the world, of course. And the more women who are there in positions of power, the better off we're all going to be. In the olden days, when I used to be out on the hustings giving speeches, I always used to point out the fact that it seemed that that when women got to positions of power, the focus of those positions changed. Well, I think we're getting to the point where we are focusing those positions, where women are not only filling positions, but are creating the noise, so to speak, that goes to reach out to others and to make things, in my view, a better world. On the most recent appointment, I do wish, I agree, I'm glad that you cited, Maria, what Justice Ginsburg said about it won't really be good or right until there are 9 women on the court. I possibly, from a personal perspective, would have selected someone else, but I am very happy to see that we have another woman on the court. I am a little bit dismayed by the selection of the person to swear her in.
Justice Thomas, I believe.
Yes.
Is that because of the
that doesn't bode well in my personal perspective.
Well, and let me ask a little bit about sort of just because I get this question all the time from my students, even though we're many years later. How do you do the life balance, the work family life balance, and still excel and be, I guess, for me, adequate in the family area?
Is that a question directed to me?
No, not at all, because I know your kids sing your praises, but the truth is that for you, you've excelled on both fronts. And what advice would you give to my students about how to make this work? And frankly, now there's some men who even ask that question.
Well, first of all, you have to want it yourself. You have to dedicate yourself, and you can't, if you're a student right now in law school, obviously your focus is to be the best possible student that you can and to do as well as you can in law school. But if you're a student and you are a mother, or you have others who are dependent on you, like your parents or others, then you have two things that you have to focus on. The one thing you must not do is to go in too many directions. You got to choose what's important to you and then just concentrate on those things. No more coffee clatches, except if it's in a study group, of course. But then coffee is out the window. But you know, it's just so important to focus on what is really important. And right now, as a student, what's important is getting the best grades that you possibly can. And more than that, in law school, please remember your obligation to your community. When you're out there looking for a job, one of the first things that employers are going to ask is, well, what else have you done? What have you done for your community during the time that you were working so very hard in law school? So that's my thought.
Justice Todd, do you feel like you had to make any sacrifices to become a lawyer and to become a justice as you are?
I think it's tough. I marvel that Pat, with her incredibly successful career, also had 5 children. I mean, to be a professional person, a mother, a spouse, you know, a homemaker, to be involved in the community, all of those things take time. And I think that I really think it's tough. I don't think it's as easy as some people think or wish it were. And I think it's particularly difficult for women. You know, there's certain responsibilities still that are expected and thrown upon women. Things have changed. I think younger men and younger husbands and fathers are taking a different kind of role in the household, parenting, etc. But I found it to be very, very challenging. And I mention that when I talk to young, especially young women who are entering any kind of profession, that it's tough. It's tough to do it all. So Pat, I really admire you for doing it.
Maria, Kathryn, we admire all of you. Maria, any thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, it's very challenging. You have to have a good support system. I was pregnant when I ran for the State Bar Board of Governors position. Got a little bit of flack for that. I didn't really plan it that way, but I was pregnant. So my son arrived 2 weeks before, early 2 weeks before I was installed as on the board by Chief Justice George then. And it was hard to do it all. I still, as Kathryn said, had to be the primary one to make sure his appointments were taken care of, that there were plenty of diapers and formula and everything when I left for board meetings that were usually up in San Francisco or Sacramento and for 3 or 4 days at a time. My husband was, very supportive and hands-on, but still it fell on me to make sure everything was managed. Had an aunt who would take time off from her job as a teacher's aide in Pomona School District to come and watch my son, our son during the day, so Steve could work on our practice while I was away at board meetings and conferences and all over the country at that point. So it's really hard to juggle. I'm glad I was not a mom. I'm glad I was not married during law school. Law school got all my focus, and I needed to give it all my focus. It was very challenging, more so than anything I'd ever done before. So I definitely do not recommend someone to get married, get pregnant while in law school, especially as a first year. But you need that support system. And I think Justice Ginsburg had said, I was fortunate to marry somebody that thought my job was as important as his, and my giving back to the community was as important for all of us. So I was very blessed in that regard.
I'm wondering for all of you, if you think that there are still stereotypes of how women will view legal issues or which side women will come out on legal issues because we're women. And I'm just wondering, Pat, if you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I frankly never experienced that. I just, my practice has been such that people thought of me as a nice person who was a good lawyer, but a bulldog in the courtroom. And I really have not experienced that people talk down to me. In fact, I went in the olden days when I was very involved with things. I was invited by Justice Stephen Reinhardt to go to the Ninth Circuit Judicial Conference, and I think I was on a panel. Gee, I should have thought of this before. I'm thinking of it now, but the panel discussion had to do with people talking down to women lawyers and calling women by their first names. And I looked around and I saw all these judges who were friends of mine by that time. And I looked and I said, well, gee, I think it's a great thing. All of the judges I know call me by my first name, and we have drinks together too. And so that was the kind of atmosphere that I was in. I was very lucky. I had a very supportive law firm, as everybody knows, Sam Williams, Seth Hofstadler. And I just didn't, I can't say that I had a lot of horrible problems. And I'm very sympathetic because I understand what Maria is saying, and I get that. And I think those issues are still out there. But from my personal perspective, I was very lucky.
Justice Todd, the confirmation hearing's over, but I'm getting questions. And so let me see if I can phrase the one that just came in. The question is that there's a lot of comments going around about Justice Barrett not having a lot of real world experience. I mean, she is, like some of us, a nerdy law professor. And I'm wondering to what extent you've had to rely on real life experience, how much that has come up, especially as being a woman on the bench.
Well, I do think that our experiences have made us sensitive to certain things. I mean, my youth and childhood was very much colored by the fact that I had been in an internment camp. And it's not something that I thought about, but I had been segregated from everyone and treated in a certain way because of my racial heritage. So that's something that's been, that I'm very sensitive about, or I have been. And I think that that colored my perspective in approaching cases and being sensitive to the difficulties that people face, being a minority. I think that all of us bring that kind of experience to the fore when we work. And something that Maria said, one of the reasons that I was particularly interested in becoming a lawyer was sitting in that law office with, there were lots of, there were first and second generation Japanese Americans coming in with their problems. And I knew that these people did not feel that they had any political or economic power. And that was something that I was very interested in providing. So I think each of us brings that kind of our personal experiences to the fore when we, in our practice and in facing the work that we do, the work that I did as a judge. I was on the juvenile court for a significant period of time, and I think my background as a female, as a minority, all of those things I think came into play in reading these records and seeing what a child had gone through. So, our experiences do that for us. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Maria,
have there been times, hypothetically, where you have faced what I call clueless male behavior, which also can be demonstrated by women, right? Who don't really get it. And how do you tend to deal with that? The people who will just say things that make you shake your head.
Sometimes with sarcasm as a response. I had a Chief Justice after introducing myself my first year on the board. There was an annual dinner with the board and the State Bar Board of Governors and the court. And he said, "Oh, I understand you went to Loyola Law School." I said, "Yes, I did. I did. I'm very proud of my school." He said, "Oh, well, my daughter went to Stanford." And I wanted to say, well, you know, if my parents had been Supreme Court justices, I probably would have gone to Stanford too. But instead I said, well, I would expect nothing less from the daughter of Supreme Court justice. And we walked away to join another conversation. I just thought that was uncalled for, unnecessary, and it struck me from this particular justice that I did not expect. Back to the Me Too thing, I did have a colleague on the board. We were all dressed up for a black tie event, and I was wearing a dress that was a halter style. My back wasn't exposed, but partially. And, you know, we were hugs and kisses, gave hugs and kisses, we everybody. And then his fingers lingered on my back.
Whoa.
And his wife was there and not facing that little conversation group, but was there in the room. And I just turned around like, what the heck are you doing? It's like, oh,
Did you use violence or words? I'm just wondering, violence or
I
words?
used words. My fist was clenched, but I used words. So this was 2000. It was 2000. I was really shocked that was happening at that point in time from someone that I had served on the board with already for a full year. We served 3-year terms, so it was actually over a year at that point. So those experiences still happen, and is my understanding. I haven't had anything recently, but it definitely makes you think about how much further we have to go, and how some males are clueless. And I don't know how you get around that.
Pat, first of all, I want the record to be overwhelmingly clear that I think all of you, and you in particular, Pat, have been extraordinary at both your profession and your personal life. I want to ask you though, what's the next set of challenges that you think women face? You know, I was a little concerned during the confirmation hearing that everyone thought women would think the same way about the candidate, as if we just all fall in line. What do you think the next set of challenges are for women?
Gosh, you know, to answer that, that's the other book that I'm writing. But the challenges never stop. Every time you look around, you find somebody, as Maria said, doing something that you think back, what? How could that possibly have happened? How could that person have said that? And so from my personal perspective, as usual, I think that our challenge as women is to continue to fight the good fight and to be out there and to be advancing women's rights. And when I say that, I don't say that to the denigration of men at all. I say that only because we cannot leave behind those women who are still fighting. If you look at the corporate area, you don't see many heads of the major companies who are women. Yes, there are a few, but you have to look far and wide. And Laurie, you are a great representative of women in academia, but even so, it's not overwhelming. Every field that we look at, still women need more support and continued support. And so I think the next challenge is to continue the challenges, to meet the challenges that we have been meeting for umpty-ump years, and work hard and make it all right. And that's why I have all these children, 3 of whom are women, all of whom are successful and doing well. And they're doing the same thing in their own field. So
I guess that's why we call you all trailblazers. Justice Todd, in terms of a trailblazer on the bench, what changes have you seen and what changes do you think we need to have on the higher levels of the court to really have women represent? We have a Chief Justice, as you said, of the California Supreme Court, but are there still challenges that women face in terms of the judiciary? And as a justice, you can decline to answer and ask a question back.
Well, it's really heartening to see the number of women who are now on the bench. The number of women who are taking leadership roles on the bench, becoming, presiding justices, presiding judges, who are heads of executive committees on the court. I think that women are very active and making a very large impact on the judicial system. I mean, I'm talking about the state judicial system. I was in thinking about this program, I was remembering when Joan Klein and Vano Spencer got together, and a group of us who were still on the municipal court at that time worked on the first meeting of the National Association of Women Judges. And Rose Elizabeth Byrd was the Chief Justice of California at that time. And I don't know, there may be 120 judges who came from all across the country. I think that was in 1978 or 79. But if you think about how that organization has grown and become powerful, how women in the American Bar Association have become so much more active and present. Pat is right that we've made a huge impact. I think we've made a big difference in the way things are done. There's probably a way to go, though. Still a way to go.
Well, I want to ask Maria about that way to go. And by the way, everybody watching the program, we thank you. And we also invite you to submit your questions. I mean, it's a unique opportunity to talk to these women. Maria, what's the next challenge? And I'm also thinking sort of the intersectionality, that we have different groups out on the street saying, listen to us, let us be part of the system.
I think that's where we have a long ways to go to bring the different groups, different perspectives of women. We are not homogeneous. We do not all think alike. That was something I encountered as a young lawyer and also as a bar leader, that since I was the first on the State Bar Board of Governors, my male colleagues asked the few females that were already on the board, who is she like? Is she like, this person or this female or that female? It's like, well, no, I'm my own female. I don't think the same way that this one particular woman does on this issue. I have my own views and opinions. So I had to forcefully say, if you want to know what I feel about on an issue, ask me. Don't ask another woman, because we may have a different perspective. And that's what I encountered after graduating from law school. I got married and Steve had a commitment to the JAG Corps. So I ended up in Central Texas, very provincial, and one of a handful of women practicing there in Central Texas in Bell County. And the judges asked my boss, who's male, who is she like? The three women that practiced, and they almost all practiced family law. And I wasn't practicing family law, I was doing consumer litigation. So, it was within their comfort zone to pigeonhole us. and I've always resisted being pigeonholed. So that's something we have a long ways to go to. But I do want to address one thing that Kathryn, Justice Todd, brought up was Vano Spencer and Justice Dempsey Klein, Joan Dempsey Klein. Joan Dempsey Klein, if I remember correctly, she was the first woman appointed to the Los Angeles bench, and Vano Spencer was the first African woman appointed. And when we formed Latina Lawyers in '97, we attended an ABA meeting, my co-founders and I, and we were still a little, I want to say, we were feeling a little pressure that we formed this organization. And the thought was that we were splitting the power of the Latinos in Los Angeles and diluting that power. So we attended this ABA board meeting, and we walk into a room, and there's Justice Dempsey Klein and Vano Spencer sitting there. And Justice Joan Dempsey Klein saw my name tag, and that it said Latina Lawyers Bar Association. And she looked at us and she said, "It's about time." And we felt so uplifted, so supported, just those simple words, you know. So trailblazers of trailblazers of trailblazers. They're amazing women who are no longer with us. But, my hands full.
And they were so supportive of women. Oh my goodness, of
absolutely.
us when we came on, the first women judges, you know, Vano and Joan. I mean, they called us, they asked us if we needed help, and they invited us to work on that first meeting of the National Association of Women Judges. We were all, you know, there was just a handful of us, maybe 10 of us, who were brought into this circle, and they're incredibly helpful to each of us, really. I understand, Maria, exactly how you felt, because those two did that for all of us.
And so, you know, I should bring it around to the question of, is Loyola unique? Is there something about the Loyola experience that you felt made you into the trailblazer you became? Pat?
Well, Loyola is unique. It is a school that has always been extremely supportive of women and of those who might have a little bit more difficulty making time in their careers. The fact that Loyola, in my understanding, is still has a night school, which is where I started and pretty much did most of my work in night school, is really fabulous. It is just a wonderful contribution to women and to older students who are, or students who have other support responsibilities. And so, yes, Loyola is unique. It's an institution kind of unparalleled in its contribution, particularly to the legal community in Los Angeles County.
And Kathryn, any thoughts that you have about Loyola, unique? Maybe it just.
I thought the all of the professors I had were so wonderful and supportive. There's nothing I can compare it to tell you the truth, but
Fair enough.
I felt very well supported by Loyola Law School.
Hey, Kathy, do you remember Father Vachon?
Of course I do.
What a guy.
And Bud Ogren. And
Bud Ogren, right? And Lloyd
Bill
Tevis.
Coskren and George Garbisi. I mean, they were such wonderful professors.
And Otto Kaus.
Oh my gosh, Otto Kaus, of course.
Wow.
So, and you know, we had a 25th reunion that some of us put together, and some of the professors actually came. Bill Coskren was there, and Quentin Ogren.
Oh, yes.
He came.
You know, Maria, I don't want to take too much time, but let me just say before Maria is asked the same question, that I think one of the things about Loyola that was so wonderful is the lasting friendships and relationships. And I think you all know, because you know me and you know Loyola, but I have the most wonderful friends, my very dearest friends from law school: Jan Chubb, Lola McAlpin Grant, Paula Tipton, Patty LaBello, gosh, who am I forgetting? Megan Wagner, LaBello, Chubb, Tipton, Wagner. It's just a fabulous, fabulous memory that exists, continues to this day. Excuse me, Maria, for taking.
No. You know, and in fact, you should know that we got a question, but we got a comment from Suzanne Bruguera, who says, "Thank you all for your leadership, integrity, and friendship to the legal community, men and women." And I think that kind of sums up people's sentiment in watching all of you. Maria, your thoughts, anything special about Loyola?
I think, well, my heart goes out to Loyola. I mean, I met love my life there, and lifelong friends and colleagues like Patty, who, you know, I don't know if I ever thanked you, Patty, but thank you so much for always giving me that warm, friendly smile when I entered the ballroom or reception room at, you know, when I was running for the State Bar Board of Governors, and later when I was on. I could always count on your support and your warmth and your connections. So I definitely appreciate that. But Loyola is a very special place. It's family. And when I go back on campus, well, we can't now, but whenever I go back on campus, I feel that warmth and that family presence, you know, from faculty, from staff, from everybody. Even the janitors, one of the cleaning ladies, Gloria, is still there.
She just retired. I think I missed her. But I want to tell you, I haven't mentioned anything about my experience, but I love the law and I love Loyola and I love you. You know, you were there for me
Laurie,
when we did a fashion show when I was pregnant, but that's another Zoom and another book.
Right.
The other thing about Loyola, because I have questions I wasn't able to ask, is that we're not afraid of controversies. And so we did get a question about, with the latest appointment to the Supreme Court, are we worried that women's rights will backslide? And I know that's probably for another whole program, but I would invite you, if you have comments from any of the panelists, you could share them with me and we'll get them out to the people who are asking them, because we need to take on those challenging questions. We're not just a rah-rah society, we're one who trailblazes. And that's what each and every one of you have done. So I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Zoom today. And I want to thank everybody who's watching us. And I'm going to send it back to Dean Waterstone with, boy, Dean, this is the biggest gift that I've received from Loyola Law School. And no, you don't have to give me a raise. You just have to give me the spirit, the love, the hard work, and the courage of the women on this Zoom.
Oh, can't say it any better than that. Thank you all so much for an amazing session. Thank you, everyone that joined us today. And everyone have a great rest of the day. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.